Hey, you need a lift? One of the many tragedies of the story is that when these boys and young men were just trying to figure out who they are, it's ripped away. It's not just about how did Gacy become a monster, but how did we as a society allow this to happen?
Have you ever done a real person before?
I have, yeah. With someone like John Gacy, someone who is infamous, I was very hesitant because of the nature of the subject matter and not wanting to do anything that felt salacious or exploitative. And then when you told me that it was going to be very victim-centric and there were going to be these short stories in every episode of some of the victims before they met Gacy, that really was what drew me to the project.
I've said this a lot now, like how lucky I am that the studio, the network actually said, go ahead and do it that way.
It was such a relief to know that if I had to step into the shoes of this person, that he wasn't going to be glorified and that it wasn't going to be his story that was being told. He has to be, unfortunately, part of the story, but that we're not telling his story. That, to me, was really important.
Police looking for John Gacy. Can I help you? Kid's missing. Reported last seen with you.
When you first see Detective Rafael Tovar, you realize he's just had this style about him, but he's very soulful as well.
My experience with Tovar was just in the Peacock documentary, and I'm so curious as to how your research happened.
Yeah, my character specifically is the experience of several individuals who were involved in the case, but Tovar was the lead investigator. But beyond that, he approached it with a lot of compassion.
My boy! He's my boy. I'm sorry.
What were your thoughts about Elizabeth?
There's not a lot out there of Elizabeth. So I found myself leaning much more into reading books and things written by people who had lost children.
I mean, that story of a mother's love that you describe is critical to the whole piece. I mean, I remember as you're giving one of Elizabeth's first kind of speeches and just seeing kind of the light click on, like, this is the heart of it.
They're all victims, innocent lives stolen from us. The system failed these families.
Through my conversations with Patrick, our showrunner, the area of the story that I think Kozensak is kind of carrying is showing these systematic police failures that led to this. And where does the responsibility lie?
There's a huge focus in this show on not only how can a human being behave like this, but how can they get away with it for so long?
Yeah.
So you're not a victim. You're a whore. They pay you to keep your mouth shut about the murders, too?
And the show also highlights a societal bigotry, a homophobia, but especially through your character and through Tovar's character, we see that there were two men who, at a certain point in this case, insisted that things change.
His teenage male employees start disappearing, and nobody in your department looks into the guy?
What's fascinating about Gacy is how much he was in the public eye. He was this jolly joker, clown, but I think he thinks he's a lot funnier than he actually is.
Yeah.
You know? Huh? What do you think? Paul Revere's got nothing on me, right? That aspect of him, I think, is fascinating when we think of the sort of the serial killer stereotype. One of the tricks of playing this is that we've tried to figure out is like, when are the moments where we see the darkness? I think even in like my first audition with you, you were like, play against the darkness. And then eventually you have to let the audience in.
See, there's really four Gacys. There's John the contractor, John the politician, John the clown, and then there's the other guy.
The original game plan was this idea that you sort of just, you hit it until you get to episode 6, it all comes out. But I think that what we've discovered over the course of developing it together, that there are all of these little moments that we've captured where you just let it slip. But the audience has to be paying attention.
Nobody suspects a clown.
It's hard to look at your buddy, Michael Chernus.
Thank you for saying that.
Who is the sweetest man in the world.
Yes.
And to watch him transition from the jovial local business owner, John Wayne Gacy, to the dead-eyed killer is chilling.
You said
that you would do anything for money. Isn't that right?
Was there like a particular moment in production that you were most affected by what you were doing?
I mean, the simple answer is the first time I went into the crawl space.
Tovar describes the crawl space as just nasty, smelly, stinky, awful.
And you were on the stage for that stuff, right?
We were on the
crawl
stage
space?
for that, yeah. We built the Gacy house on the largest stage we have here at the studio. It had to be elevated, and we built it 2-tiered because we also needed the subterranean aspect of it. It really slaps you in the face, the nature of what we were doing.
First time I walked in and the entire floor had been removed. That day was a real coming to awareness of the scale of this thing.
What are those flags?
That's a person. That's a person, that's a person.
I remember that day, and it hit me too. I think everyone felt it.
Do you think that you're able to, like, are you able to divorce yourself? Do you get out of it?
It's a great question. And it's a question I think most of my friends and family asked me when I took this on, like, how are you gonna take care of yourself? Do you have like a mental health plan? I think as an actor, my way in is often through empathy, you know, like trying to put myself in somebody else's shoes and trying to figure out why they do what they do. And with him, there's this eventual leap that I can't make. I can have some amount of compassion that he was closeted to some extent. He wasn't able to be open about his sexuality because of the time. And so I can have some amount of understanding of that. But then eventually I get to a point where I go, well, there were millions of other people who were also struggling with being closeted, and they didn't kill 33 people, right?
Yep.
And so centering myself in that helps.
He planted that one seed you don't want planted. That brought out the bad clown.
It's a very famous case dealing with very tense subject matter, and I'm just curious what you did to help protect yourself as we all kind of descended into this thing.
It wasn't like difficult to find a focus or a stillness on the set because everybody, I think, was feeling respectful of the story.
Right.
But it was an incredibly exhausting time.
We have to get this right.
My son is out there.
I understand, Elizabeth.
No, don't say that. You don't. You don't understand. He's out there. I want some goddamn answers!
In the process of creating the show, I was just trying to get the job right. But then I remember, and I think I shared this with you, the night that we were doing all the picking up in the alley of the young men. And it was, I think that was a Friday, and I was heading back home. On that Sunday afternoon, I was out having a, I don't know why that gets me every single time. I was having a football catch with my eldest son, who was almost 14. And it was the very first time in the entire production it hit me that my son is the same age as the youngest victim. And it really walloped me.
That night really sticks with me as well. There's just something about the way everything came together that night, like the weather and the way the street looked and kind of felt, and all those incredible actors, costume design, just everything felt so real.
Get in.
And the nature of the scene, not really having any dialogue, it also added to that feeling of just like these quick bits of like, get in the car. Get in the car. It was the first time I got a sense of just the volume.
So under the house, in the garage, is there any place else we should be looking, John?
Nah. You ran out of room at the inn.
When you dehumanize people in that way, it's just so disturbing. And it really got to me.
Like I said, I'm always looking for a specific kind of guys.
Trying to comprehend the scale of what this man had done to the world. It was unfathomable. Literally, I could not fathom. It was like trying to understand how big the universe is. And I think going through this whole process has really, unfortunately, given me an idea of the scale of the ramifications of this man's actions.
How many are down there?
No. Stop. Go! Hey.
How many?
Hey, go!
How many did you kill?
I find this as I become older that it's not so much about the answers anymore as it is about the questions.
That's right.
And keeping the questions alive.
That's right.
Gives you something to reach for.
I'm just looking for a connection, a reason there ever be a good enough reason?
What have you learned throughout the process? Maybe about yourself, but what do you also hope that the audience learns from what we've done here?
I've been thinking a lot about the nature of grief and about moving on from these sorts of experiences and if that's possible or not, because it doesn't bring their children back. And I think that that's something that, to me, is really a big part of what my experience through this show has been. Learning that in some ways, when something like this happens, time stops. For the person who goes through it.
I think you hit on something that is really poignant. And I think the idea of closure is kind of always misguided in that, because it's always happening, it's always present, it's always in your experience and in your memory. And I know for Rafael Tovar himself, the real man, he has proclaimed in many different interviews that there won't ever be closure for him until each of them have all been identified.
The thing we are able to do with the show, which I think is beautiful in regards to that, is we can't bring these people back, but the show is showing them in their life.
Happy birthday to you. In the victim stories, there is so much joy infused into those. And I think that's so important, because as an audience, we start to fall in love with these young men. And then at the end of the episode, we realize what happened to them. I wonder if you could just talk about that process of when did the decision happen to focus on those stories?
But it wasn't really until we got into the writer's room, a large segment of the writer's room, by happenstance, they were queer writers for the most part.
Right.
They were bringing to the table their personal stories.
That's huge.
All of the different challenges that faced each of them in their journey towards acceptance of not just by society, but more importantly by themselves.
Right.
And it just led to your point where you just said to joy. And it always came back down, like everything came crashing down to earth when you realized that these young boys and young men were never going to find that stable ground where they could just be who they wanted to be.